Hi, this is Raj from MR Sportscars. In this Diary of a Porsche Specialist episode, I'm going to talk about two specific cars in the Porsche range. They are both made around the same time. This is the first of them, which is the Porsche 911 991 series. This particular model is a Carrera 4S, so it's the wide body rear four-wheel drive with 3.8 litre flat six, produces 400 horsepower. This is a coupe, but it's fitted with the panoramic sunroof, so that's a clear glass roof with piano black panels front and at the rear of the roof, so it looks quite nice. This is a sapphire blue example. When Porsche produced the 991 series 911, it was released sort of early 2012. The market launch cars were, I think there was even a few registered 2011, but this is a 2014. When they released that car, it was a huge step change of I would say GT handling, slightly wider, bigger but lighter car compared to the 997 Gen 2. They brought in the electric steering rather than hydraulic steering, and they kept the same powertrain though, so it's a good comparison with the other car which I'm going to be driving very shortly, which is the 981 series Cayman. Now both essentially have very similar interiors. That's a 3.4 litre. From memory, the horsepower is 320 something, 325. This car will do 60 in 3.9. That car in the S with the PDK like this one with chrono, that one will do the same 60 miles an hour in just over 4 seconds. Obviously it has 2 seats rather than 4, but how they handle and how they drive, well, first of all, it's very similar. So they both had similar sort of engine characteristics introduced. So the 3.4 and the 3.8 are very responsive. They're very vocal, like this is, especially with the sports exhaust like this car has. With the 7-speed PDK, the ZF box, they are incredible all-round driving cars because they can deal with traffic, start-stop traffic, no problem. They can deal with the racetrack as the other extreme, or they can just do B roads very competently with lots of engagement. So with this steering wheel, the sport design steering wheel, which both cars have, you have full-size paddles. So you have one side which is to go down a gear and one side to go up a gear. So it's very much like a race car, and those paddles also follow the steering wheel as well, so they're exactly where you want them to be midway through a corner. And I love how these cars drive. So I typically sell Porsches from 2009 to 2015, so that spans 2 generations of Porsche in broad terms. So that's the 2009 to 2012 broadly is the 997 Gen 2 911s and the 987 Gen 2 Boxsters and Caymans. So that was 2012, and then 2012 to 2015 is this generation, so 991 series 911s as well as the 981 Caymans and Boxsters. And they have very different driving characteristics. They're all as reliable as each other because they have the same essentially powertrains carried across both. How they drive though is very different. So these later cars for me feel more grown up in how they approach handling, how they approach performance. They feel more resolved in terms of how they feel. So the comfort, I think, has gone up. The way that the ergonomics have definitely have been a big step forward in terms of having a lovely, well-designed and sort of all the buttons where you want them to be. But also the handling was very much at the forefront. They introduced more composure at high speeds with these cars, and they increase the wheelbases. So this car has got a 10 centimetre longer wheelbase than the previous generation. That makes it more stable at high speeds, and it's the same with the Caymans and Boxsters too, the 981s versus 987 Gen 2s. Now in this video I want to compare how this one drives to the Cayman. Driving this one first is sort of a good way to start this video, I think, because this is essentially the flagship. This is the one, the 911 is where Porsche started out with their sports car series. Obviously they had their 356s before that, but this was the 911s were the sports cars, and they still are regarded as the ultimate sports car. And I wanted to start this by showing you that the 911 is still at the top of the tree at Porsche in terms of sports cars. 4-seater layout is very well thought out in this generation of car, and that's the one thing that you sort of miss with the Cayman, with it being just the 2-seater with the engine behind the driver and passenger. But this car feels incredibly grown up and composed. It has 400 horsepower, but it has 4-wheel drive. It feels very well. It just feels like a very safe place to be behind the wheel. You've got plenty of sound, as you can hear in this video as well. And it's so responsive on the throttle as well. I just love driving this. I think out of the two, this one for me is the one that you would be happier living with more for long distance, if you're doing more long distance journeys. Not just even if you don't need the rear seats, it just feels that little bit, I don't know, like I said, a little bit more grown up, and for that reason I think it's the better GT car. We'll come to how the Cayman handles compared to this, but this car just feels absolute perfection on the road. It feels the right, for UK roads, it's got the right balance of agility and composure. It doesn't ever feel underpowered, but at the same time it doesn't ever feel overpowered either. It just handles the road so well, and I can't think of many other brands of cars that sort of compare in how they make you feel. I mean, it's still very much a sports car. You can see the lovely the front arches curving in the rear view mirror. Sort of 30% of it is filled with those wide rear arches. The sound systems are great. I mean, there's very little that you can fault with these cars in general. And if you spec one up really well, like this one with sport chrono, so it has the stopwatch and clock there, sports exhaust, switchable sport suspension, the panoramic roof, I struggle to find another car that is in the same league, especially now. I mean, this is a it's a 2014, so this is 7 years old. It doesn't look or feel 7 years old. This car's just done it's 29,400 miles, and yeah, it just feels absolutely like pinpoint sharp in how it steers. Electric steering on these is actually very good. It feels very natural, and yeah, I just simply love how this car drives. You can just get in it, you feel comfortable behind the wheel, and I've witnessed it with so many people that have come to view and buy cars from me, that it might be their first Porsche, but they get in a car like this and it isn't intimidating. It doesn't make you feel like it's about to sort of fly off the road by just touching the throttle. It's the whole experience is so intuitive that yeah, and anyone who is a competent driver will definitely feel at home. And as you put the miles on the car, you will feel more and more comfortable with it and gel with it. So yeah, great car to start with, and I'll hop into the 981 Cayman S next. I'm here now in the 981 Cayman S. As we're comparing a Cayman with the 911, it's worth discussing one issue that some people will come across, which is that people look down on the Cayman because it's inferior to the 911. Same with the Boxster, they say that they're the sort of soft versions, they're the hairdresser's equivalent of a 911, but all those people that claim that and look down on these models clearly has never driven this era, particularly 981 series Cayman or Boxster. So that's 2012 to 2015 approximately. There were a couple in 2016 run out registered models, but these cars are just, as soon as you get in them, phenomenal. Just like the 911, intuitive and easy to drive, even if you've never driven a Porsche before. Extremely comfortable. They have that same, as you've seen, looking at the interior of the 911 versus this, the same console, and I'll go into that when we do the walk around with both cars stationary. Today's a very cold day, so I have to be a bit careful. This car's obviously rear-wheel drive. All Caymans were rear-wheel drive. You couldn't get a four-wheel drive option, unlike the 911, which I drove, which was a four-wheel drive 4S. Rear-wheel drive, mid-engined, 3.4 flat six. I think it's 325 horsepower. And about 1.4, just over 1.4 tons. But just feels so safe. You feel at one with the road, but yet you feel as if you've got all of the safety you need, the safety nets, traction control, ABS obviously, and then airbags everywhere as well. It's just like the 911, this series does feel quite big on the road, quite imposing. You have those similar shape, they're a bit more squared off, the front arches, and the rears, instead of being about 30% filled with the rear arches of that wide body 4S, I would say probably about 15-20% is that haunched rear arches, which again is a good reminder that this is a sports car. I'll obviously talk when we're comparing them side by side stationary that just how much space there is in these cars, but essentially this is a two-seater hatchback because you have got that rear hatch. It's got two areas, distinct areas where you can put things, and you've got the front boot as well, just like the 911 has. The 911 you can also fold down the rear seats and have a sort of like open hatch, but you have to reach it from the doors, whereas this has a dedicated hatch at the back. Performance wise, this will do 60 in around 4.3 with the 3.4 litre engine, PDK, Sport Chrono Package Plus, so plenty quick enough. The 911, as I said, does it in just under 4. Really, in real world terms, you won't notice the difference unless you're side by side with a car that's slightly quicker or slower. It makes no difference to how it feels. They both feel incredibly quick, perfectly powered, not underpowered. At the same time, they don't ever make you feel like you've got too much power. Obviously, if you push it too much in a corner, you're going to really feel it and have to control it, but the tyres are so big. I mean, these are 20-inch wheels. I think they're around 10 inches wide on this car. On the 991, 911, I think they're 11. So they're very, very wide rear tyres with plenty of grip. Even the two-wheel drive 911s don't struggle, and this certainly doesn't struggle to get power down with just the rear wheels. Just coming up to a milk float, so I'll be slow for a little bit. I just love these cars. I think they are, for me, not needing 4 seats, I would go for a Cayman without hesitation. I haven't got like a particular allegiance, that's what I'd call it, allegiance to a 911. So this, to me, the mid-engine layout, the balance of this car, the size of it, it just feels a little bit more nimble. It's still a great GT car like the 911 is, but this car is, I think, more fun on a Sunday blast on a B road like this one, which I'm on now. Everything is where you want it to be. The power's there on demand. It's got all the right modes, just like the 911. Build quality is the same. Yes, on this car, this wasn't spec with the extended leather. Not many were. So that is that slight sort of downgrade versus the 911. But if you get a car with the extended leather, then that's irrelevant. You can get the same bits like the Bose and later on the Burmeister systems. You can get the same sat nav, obviously. So yeah, it's just basically a baby 911 with more feel, I would say, on the limit because of the balance and composure of the car. Slightly lighter, shorter wheelbase. But yeah, both fantastic cars. But for me, in terms of dynamic prowess, the Cayman has it. Even though it's got less power, it doesn't need any more power. Just listen to that sound, it's just phenomenal. This car's got the standard exhaust, but it's had a Gundo hack, so it's got 2 bypass pipes welded in just straight to the rear tailpipes. So it just sounds incredible. Very much like the sports exhaust system that's in the 901, and also you could spec in this car as well. I'll just have another go now. Yeah, really, really lovely sounding car. These naturally aspirated last generation 981s, 991s are, for me, the pinnacle of sound and ability on the road. They absolutely sing. The flat sixes are completely missed when they introduced the 718 with the flat 4 turbocharged engine. To me, it lost its soul. Even though it might be slightly quicker to 60, might have CarPlay, Apple CarPlay and things integrated. To me, I would rather have this slightly older car with that fantastic sounding engine right behind me. And that's where I'll leave the driving, I think, onto the stationary Walkaround. This is July 2015 car. This car is a September 2014 car, built around the same era then, same technology, and I'm going to talk about the differences there are physically in this part of the video. I've already shown you how they drive and how they compare behind the wheel. So this is more talking about how the interiors differ, how they're similar, and also sort of practicality things as well. So the first obvious differences are the Cayman is a 2-seater. So there's only those 2 seats. Behind there is the other key difference. The engine is in the middle of the. It's a mid-engine car, so the engine is actually in that section there. Whereas in the 911, it's a strict 4-seater. So you've got the 2 front seats, obviously, then you've got the rear seats, with the engine being tucked up in this section here at the back, at the rear of the car. So that makes a big difference to how they're laid out and luggage space and things like that. Now I'll show you the front boot in both. Well, first of all, here's the keys. So the keys are the same, except the Cayman has an extra button there for the rear boot, so I'll show you that in a second. But you can hold down this button here to open the front boot. There we go. So there's the front boot of the 911. There's the front boot of the Cayman S. They should be pretty much the same size, except this is a 4-wheel drive, so this bit should be a bit narrower, so that triangle goes all the way from front to back. Whereas in here, there's quite a bit more room, so that's right at the front there, but there's a good maybe 2 or 3 inches of extra room. They both go down to the floor pan of the car. The tool sets are all in the sides there, and actually you can see, so that's that one in the Cayman, but I'll show you in the 911 they're actually shorter, so they don't go back as far, these sections here. Both have their batteries under this section here, so that is very similar, or the same. This panel's the same as well, so they both have a battery there, brake fluid there, screen wash in the corner, air filter there, but then they both also have their tyre. If you want to top up the tyres with air, you can use that machine there, which comes out and plugs into the 12-volt system. Very practical. Some Porsche owners have no idea that's there, so it's worth pointing that out whenever I get the opportunity to. Now this car's finished in sapphire blue metallic, which is a really striking colour. This replaced aqua blue metallic, and then before that cobalt blue is the equivalent in the older 911s. This car's finished in classic guards red, so this car colour has been around since the 80s. They may have changed it ever so slightly, but it's got the same name and basically it's the same hue as well. I've actually got all the statistics here, so we can just quickly look through those. So, those both up. So I've got overall width of the 911 1852. The Cayman's 1801, so it's 5 centimeters wider. The height 1276 tall in millimeters. The 911 1295. The Cayman. There are some differences because this car doesn't have PASM. This one has sports PASM, so there should be 20mm difference between the two. So they would actually be the same height if they had the same suspension setup. The length is 4491 millimeters for the 991. The 981 Cayman is 4380, so there's about an extra 10 centimeters length in the 911. Fuel tanks are about the same size, 64 litres in the Cayman versus 68 in the 911. The track is quite similar, 1538, so slightly wider, and 1552 for the 911 versus 1526 and 1540. So again, it's about a centimetre, just over a 12mm difference in width from the insides of the tyres, and then wheelbase 2450, 2475. So that's quite surprising actually. The 911 is 2.5 centimetres. The distance between the front wheel and the back, the front wheel and the back wheel is 2.5 centimetres shorter. So it should actually feel slightly more nimble as a result of having that shorter wheelbase. They're both running on optional wheels, so that's the optional 20-inch wheels. They're called the Sport Techno. They're 5-spoke diamond cut wheels, and this is optional, actually 911 Turbo 3 wheels they're called, and they're 20 inches as well. On my tyre of choice, these ones actually Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, and these are N0. Even if you can't get Porsche rating in your particular Porsche, I'd recommend those tyres because they are fantastic, as are these actually, Goodyear Eagle F1s, which are on this car. They're N0 as well, Eagle F1. Now, in terms of similarities, LED lights on both, bi-xenon headlights on both as well, and PDLS if you optioned it. From memory, this car has PDLS, this one doesn't, but the brightness of the lights is still the same, except that these don't rotate around corners. They both have daylight running lights at the front and fog lights too. Now the wing mirrors, these are the standard wing mirrors that you'd find on 911s typically and Caymans, and you could spec them with electric folding, or if they weren't spec with electric folding, then you would have the ability to manually fold them. This car's been spec with the Sport Design mirrors, so they're a different design totally, and they don't fold in. Even with there was no option for an electric folding. Front bumpers are similar, but again, obviously this is a different style. This is a aero kit. Well, I say aero kit, it's the sport design package on this 911, so that's different to a standard 911. This is very similar to the GTS front bumper, and the rear spoiler actually goes up higher on this car because it's a sport design car. Now on the 911 you have the exhausts on this model, the 991 Gen 1, either side, whereas the Caymans have them twin exit in the middle, even with the sports exhaust. So that one has the sports exhaust, switchable sports exhaust. This one doesn't, but it sounds very much like a car with sports exhaust. I'll just show you the interiors. Well, let me show you the rear hatch. So this is an extra luggage area in the back of the Cayman, so it essentially makes it a two-seater hatchback. So you have quite a big area there, as well as up there. You can move this net up there and have stuff there and more stuff there, or you can have a second net there. Also has storage compartments either side of the engine, just there, and they're quite deep as well. Now let's start with the Cayman. So door entry guards are standard, are plastic with a stainless steel etched insignia there. Cayman as standard didn't come with extended leather, but you could spec it, so that's got like a plastic finish, just leather there, and same with the dash, that's a plastic finish. This was all standard, the stainless steel sort of aluminium look trim, and then the centre console has all the sports related options there, air conditioning, and then it has the PCM. This car's got sport chrono, so it's got the extra stopwatch in the middle there, and it has sport plus, it's a PDK obviously, and it has the 2-zone climate control, so it has all the buttons there for controlling that. The seats are the hardback sport seats, and they're a 2-way electric, so just the back is electrically controlled. The height and moving the whole seat back and forth is manual. It was spec with this crests on the seats as well, the Porsche crests, and red seat belts. And they're all essentially bits you can get on the 991 as well. Let me just show you some other bits. So it doesn't have the electric folding mirrors, so there would be an extra button there, but essentially this control panel is the same in both cars. It has Bose, so it has the Bose badge there and on the other side, just there. And it has the sport design steering wheel. So this is a lovely steering wheel which has full size shift paddles. So there's to go up a gear, there's to go down, and they follow the wheel. And when you enable Sport Plus and Sport, they come up there, and launch control would light up there if you engaged, if you did the sequence of things to do that. Now the dials were spec'd in guards red to match the exterior, so that was an option. You can have coloured dials, and I'll show you the standard dials in the 991, which doesn't have optional ones. Cruise control with this steering wheel is on this side, so that's that extra stalk there. So that's the interior. You have the same cup holders there. Now pay attention to the shape of the vents, and I'll show you the vents and everything else. And also there's 3 dials there, so I'll just show you the 991 so you can see the difference. Okay, so coming in here, all very similar, but look at the vents. The vents are a different shape. The dash is a slightly different shape, but this section is very much the same, as is the PCM, the sat nav, the aircon system, and then the sports related buttons are all there. Armrest is the same as well, except this one's been embossed with Carrera 4S as an option. The trims, which would have been silver just like in the Cayman, they've been spec'd in carbon on this car. Has the same cup holders up here as the Cayman, which fold out, all the same. Now the dashboards are 911s, and the doors in the UK were extended leather as a standard option, so there, that's all leather, as is the tops of the doors and the rest of the doors as well. Same controls there as you saw. This car has memory seats. They're called the regular sport seats rather than Sport Plus in the Cayman, but they're full electric, so they have a 14-way electric control there. For the front there, lumbar support and height and forward and back and angle, all is controlled with there, and you can store those options, as well as the steering wheel, because this car's got an electric adjustable column, whereas the standard they're manual. And the mirrors, the position of the mirrors is stored with those memories on the keys, and also 2 extra settings. Now, instead of having a rear hatch, you have got extra space in the back to store luggage, and there's even some helpful hooks to hook in some luggage securely, which you can buy from Porsche. It has ISOFIX in the back as standard as well. These seat belts aren't actually black, they're spec'd in yachting blue from the factory. And the other big difference, which you may have seen the controls there, is this car has a panoramic sunroof. Now, the Cayman couldn't be spec'd with a sunroof at all. Some people do ask, can you get a Cayman with a sunroof? You can't. Essentially, you just, if you wanted any open top sort of experience, you'd have to get the Boxster, which is the convertible version of the Cayman. So there's the panoramic roof, which opens, tilt and slide. And I'll show you the rear wings, how they differ. I'll also show you the rear. So even though there is an engine hatch at the back of this, whereas you don't get one in the Cayman, that is all you see. So you just top up the coolant and oil there. Whereas in the Cayman, there's actually 2 little areas you do that. Let me just do the rear wing. So there we go. That's how that goes up. And this, as I said, actually sticks up higher than a car without the sport design package. I'll show you the rear wing on this. Let me just show you these actual. So to top up oil and coolant on this one, there's the oil. There is the coolant. And I'll just do that spoiler. So there is that spoiler up. Where the fuel filler is the same on both, it's on this driver's arch in the UK. It's the same on both. Obviously you have lots of other differences governed by their size, weight, engine size. So this, this is a 3.8 litre flat 6 with the 7-speed PDK box options. You could get a manual version of that. You could get a manual version of this as well. This is 3.4 flat 6. Power wise, that has 400 horsepower. This has about 325 from memory. And this will accelerate 16 around 4.2, 4.3. This will accelerate 16 around 3.9. So not a huge difference in actual performance. And I've already talked about how they drive. But the actual size of them, the 911 is quite a bit bigger. The Cayman is a little bit more svelte, but still quite wide and imposing. Both very, very sporty cars. It all depends on what you find more practical. The rear hatch on the Cayman, or the extra 2 seats in the 911. And if you've got some sort of attachment to the 911 over a Cayman, they're both phenomenally composed and capable cars, and I wouldn't ever sort of talk down either, because they are both phenomenal ownership propositions and highly collectible. Both of these cars are in high demand because they're the last of the naturally aspirated Porsche Sportscars. After this generation, both cars moved to twin turbocharging. This went to a 3 litre twin turbo. This went to a 2 litre flat 4 rather than a flat six. That was still a flat six in the turbocharged era, but both moved away from the naturally aspirated sound, that whole sort of experience of the flat six sound that you recognise most Porsches for. This was the last generation with that, so that's why these are coveted so much. And I hope you found this video useful in comparing these two models. I know the prices of these do vary, but it's really up to you what your budget is and what you see as more practical and agreeable with how you want to use the car. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video.